I first joined the Red Pill community unofficially on March 18th, 2014, when my very first Manosphere article was published on Return of Kings. And now here we are, over 200 articles, 12 books, and now 1,000 episodes later. It is hard to believe that I've been a part of this community for almost a decade. It really blows my mind at this point. I was raised in a non-traditional military household. My dad wasn't the stereotypical drill sergeant military dad. He was a laid-back, kind-hearted, good-natured dude. He actually served in the Army and the Air Force over the course of 30 years. Early on, my mother was the typical military wife. It's funny. My mom was actually a soccer mom before the turn even coined. One thing that was typical as a military family is that we lived all over the place. We moved a lot. Fort Lewis in Washington State, Aleamanu Military Reservation in Hawaii, also known as AMR, McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. I mean, we were all over the place. Hell, we got to live in Hawaii for a second time, which was really cool. Like most male Gen Xers, I was fortunate enough to have grown up in a time where masculinity was celebrated. At least it was when I was a kid. Like many men my age, my heroes as a kid were Mr. T, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, so forth. My favorite shows as a kid were Knight Rider, The A-Team, Airwolf, Miami Vice. Me and my brothers loved all the Rocky movies. We loved Terminator, we loved Rambo, Top Gun, or anything with Chuck Norris or Van Damme in it. But all throughout my teens and 20s, I didn't realize that there was a seismic shift of epic proportions going on in America. And I know you guys know I'm not exaggerating here. If I'm being honest, no amount of hyperbole can really fully encapsulate the quick and steady decline of American culture as it relates to how men and women interact, both in and out of relationships. I relate the erosion of Western culture to the frog in the boiling water analogy. The culture turned up the heat a little bit with sitcoms like The Cosby Show, right? Like we all loved America's dad, Cliff Huxtable, but there was a clear yet unspoken understanding that Cliff's wife, Claire, she was the real head of household, while Cliff just kind of served as the figurehead. The temperature in the water got a little bit warmer in the 90s with shows like King of Queens. Yes, Carrie Heffernan was hot, but she was brash and she was loud and she was masculine. The culture turned up the dial a little more when they introduced shows like Living Single and Friends, which normalized and even glorified casual sex. Not only did these shows influence women, they actually started influencing men too. My best friend in college used to always tell me that he wants a woman with a career. And guys, this is back in the mid to late 90s. In 3 short decades, we've gone from men wanting women like June Cleaver to men wanting make-believe boss babes like Agent Scully from the X-Files. Well, now the water is well past 212 degrees, and it got there thanks to what is now considered to be the flashpoint in terms of sexual relations between men and women today, and that is the show Sex and the City. Carrie Bradshaw and her band of Mary Manjuice guzzlers put the nail in the proverbial coffins of female Gen Xers, millennials, and now Gen Z women by banging half the male population in New York City and looking like they're having the times of their lives doing it and still ending up with Mr. Big at the end. Sex and the City absolutely crippled relationships here in America and the West. And I think a lot of people think that the damage it's caused is irreparable. We now have 3 generations of women who honestly believe that the blueprint to true happiness is to put off starting families in their early 20s, to pursue careers and sexual hedonism, freeze their eggs in their 30s, and find Mr. Right in their 40s. All of this was in the backdrop when online dating started to take off, which skewed the dating market even further. Fast forward a few short years and the advent of the smartphone coupled with the efficiency of dating apps, and we've got the Pareto principle on steroids, where only the top 10 to 15% of men are really the only ones getting any regular action. And some figures show it might not even be that many. And unfortunately, most Western men are like the frog, boiling in water, not realizing that his environment is no longer conducive to his survival. Now, some men jumped out when the water got to, say, 100 degrees. These were the guys who figured out earlier than most how to be successful with modern women on a short-term basis. Guys like Ross Jeffries, Neil Strauss, guys like Mystery, those guys showed us how to score one-night stands really by perfecting the art of short-term seduction. Well, when the temperature reached about 150, 160, guys like Roosh, Royce, and Rollo emerged. ReturnofKings.com and ChateauHartiste.com were similar to one another in delivery and purpose. Early on, these sites more or less continued the work of Strauss, Jeffries, and Mystery's teachings. The difference was that we at Return of Kings were also focused on long-term relationships, marriages, children, a slew of other issues that have plagued Western men for decades. As I stated before, Return of Kings is where I got my start in this community. Round about 190 degrees is where the largest number of men finally woke up. Notice I didn't say most men, I said the largest number of men. This is the point where men who had an inkling or suspicion that there is something amiss in dating. They've seen and heard enough to the point where they really started questioning things. Eventually, curiosity does get the better of them. At that point, they start to Google things like how to get girls, or why are girls so difficult to please, or how to win back my ex-girlfriend. And the next thing you know, they find us. The 212 degree mark is where bad things start to happen. These are the men who get burned by infidelity, marital cheating, paternity fraud, divorce rape, family court bias, false accusations, and so forth. They know they're cooked. The guy knows that there is little he can do about the fact that he signed a birth certificate of a child that isn't biologically his. He knows he's on the hook for child support for the next 18 years of a kid he was baby trapped by. These are the men who get completely blindsided. Now, the 212 degree mark doesn't always blindside men. There are also men who have endured years of frustration, humiliation, and failure with women. These guys have all been well aware of the deplorable state of the dating market here in the 20s, but unfortunately for them, they never found solutions. And the ones who do find the solutions have likely already lost hope. These are the men who commit unspeakable crimes when they have finally had enough rejection and humiliation. Men like Elliot Rodger, Alec Manassian, Andreas Lubitz, Sung-Win Cho, those guys represent the frog who jumped out at 211 degrees, pissed off at the cook for turning up the temperature without telling him. Me personally, I jumped out of the pot at around the 205 degree mark because I'm a stubborn, hard-headed idiot sometimes. Looking back, just about every relationship I've ever been in has shown me in some way, shape, or form that women are not who or what we were raised to believe. Now, it wasn't my marriage to a woman who not only committed paternity fraud, but withheld sex from me for a year and a half that finally woke me up. Nope. It wasn't the woman I rented a house for in my name with all the utilities in my name that woke me up. Wasn't that either. It wasn't even a woman who had a kid at 13 years old by a man who was 32 years old, turning my life completely upside down that finally got through to me. It was an insignificant 3-week relationship with a low-quality Latina that finally prompted me to Google why do girls get over breakups so easily, and the rest, as they say, is history. Throughout my time in the content creation space, I've been fortunate enough to have collaborated with 3 different channels that have all reached 1 million subscribers. Fresh and Fit, Pearl Davis, and of course the late great Kevin Samuels. I had each of these creators on long before they blew up. I had Kevin on for the first time way back on May 5th of 2018. This was back when he was a men's image consultant. A little over a year later, I had Myron Gaines on. I used to host a panel show called The Six, where both Myron and Kevin were on the panel for about a year or so. Those were legendary panels. Well, about a year after that, I collaborated with Pearl. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, stop clout chasing, Donovan. None of those people needed you. Well, maybe. But let me ask you this rhetorical question. What would have happened if I had never reached out to collaborate with them? Would Kevin and Pearl still have blown up? Would there even be a Fresh and Fit? Now let me give you this rhetorical answer. We will never know. Look, guys, I'm not arrogant enough to actually believe that these channels reached 1 million plus subs because of me. That would be stupid. But I do know this. I was there with each one of them from the start. I had Kevin on a total of 46 times, which is more than any other channel by a country mile. And yes, I was the person who suggested to Myron that he could make a good living in this space.
So I know some guys are probably wondering, Myron, how did you meet Donovan Sharpe? How did you make this happen? Because a lot of people have asked, like, hey, man, how did you guys become friends and everything like that? So it started, man, I actually got a consultation with Donovan, and we were talking about, you know, shooting stuff about fitness, game, everything like that. I was like, hey, man, you're a pretty knowledgeable guy. Would you like to come on the show? And I was like, dude, it'd be an honor. And he had me on, and we talked about fitness. We did a show, and then we started doing it pretty much like weekly, bi-weekly, where we would do like fitness shows. And then I'll never forget, Donovan was like, hey, man, you need to make a YouTube channel. You need to do this. You can definitely make a pretty good living for yourself doing this stuff.
And yes, I flew Pearl out to the CME last year, put her up on my dime, and had her on a couple dozen times before anyone knew who she was. This isn't clout chasing, guys. These are facts. So while I'm not dumb enough to think I made these people who they are today, I'm not going to pretend that I wasn't a very important, consistent, and most of all, early rung on the ladders of each of their successes. There's something to be said about recognizing talent early. Anybody can get lucky and fall into a collaboration with a future YouTube star. Anyone can be in the right place at the right time. But to have been at the bottom floor of not one, not two, but 3 channels that have all amassed 7-figure subscriber counts, that's no accident. I knew all 3 of them would be stars, and I proved that early and often by investing my time, my money, my influence, and my platform to each and every one of them when they were coming up. Nobody can deny that. And those who do?
Oh man, hey.
As great as my time has been in the Red Pill community, it certainly hasn't come without its challenges. Early on, I collaborated with O'Shea Duke Jackson, who, unfortunately for me, is the male avatar for degenerates who race bait, simp, and engage in the endless self-hatred and victim mentality otherwise known as the quote-unquote black community. O'Shea did all the usual things that niggas do to black men. He sold me on the idea that us collaborating could help the both of us, then of course he turned his back on me in the end. He told Black YouTube that I was trying to start a Black 21 convention behind his back. Dude flat out lied. And I proved that he was lying with receipts in the video above. O'Shea reaffirmed a lesson I learned better than 3 decades ago. And that lesson was that a disproportionate amount of black people in America react negatively to success, prosperity, and true community. I will not make this mistake for a 3rd time. Speaking of the Black 21 convention, the man O'Shea lied about and said he was working with me on this, none other than the guy in charge of the now defunct 21 convention, Anthony Johnson. Anthony's someone I clearly should not have trusted. I literally did nothing to the guy. Before he turned on me, I hosted the Red Man Group for almost 2 years. I spoke at 3 of his events. Devin and I even helped him fight chargebacks after he attacked Rolo. But what's this knucklehead do to thank me? He doxes me. He doxes my fiance. He makes up this crazy story about us getting married and how I've adopted my niece and all this other crazy nonsense. He and I locked horns for 2 years with our competing events. And I have managed to outlast him. And the reasons aren't complicated. You see, guys, if you deal with people in good faith, you have a much better chance at having a favorable outcome. Anthony has spent almost 3 years basically taking a blowtorch to his brand. So no one should really be surprised that the 21 convention went down in flames. Now, I've had other rough patches along the way. The mistake of collaborating with Tory, Steve the Dean Williams, and Obsidian, those come to mind right off the top of my head. And look, guys, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I was blameless in all of these situations. Yes, I sold O'Shea 4 articles I sold to Roosh, with the only difference was that it was, quote, blackened, if you know what I mean. That was wrong. I had bitten off more than I could chew, I was overextended, I took a shortcut, and I got caught. There are no 2 ways about it. I was wrong, I made a mistake. But I did make O'Shea whole again by submitting 4 original articles over the next few days. So no, guys, I'm not an angel. I've made mistakes, and I've done some shady shit both on and offline. Yes, I've written several bad checks and got caught. Yes, I've been sued 3 times. Yes, I've been arrested nearly 3 dozen times. Yes, I've knocked out a few guys, which has made me a multiple-time convicted felon. Those are my skeletons, guys. My life is an open book at this point. Now, if you want to pretend that you care so much about my character flaws that you don't think you can learn from my experiences, then I can't help you. I've never purported or presented myself as this bastion of morality. I'm a man who's made many mistakes in life who happened to be lucky enough to have had the financial means to keep my freedom. Jordan Belfort, who spent, 22 years in prison? That dude still commands 5 figures for his conferences and speeches and seminars, and people line up around the block to give him their money. These people couldn't care less about his prison stint so long as he could help them make money. My supporters are the same way, and I am incredibly grateful for them. Another unexpected challenge that has positively devastated me were the sudden and unexpected deaths of people in this community who I loved, admired, and respected. Red Pill Mike was the first. Back in August of 2021, Mike died from complications related to the beer bug at 46. I'll remember Mike for his profound comments and thought-provoking super chats. James Martinez, who was an avid supporter of mine, died tragically in a car accident in Jamaica at just 44 years old. James always held me accountable, and I always appreciated it. Alan Roger Curry, who is widely recognized as the godfather of pickup and seduction, also recently passed away. Look, man, Alan was giving guys game like 20, 30 years before it was even called game. Alan and I, we collaborated many times in the early days, and he really taught me a lot about the psychology of women. Alan is truly one of, if not the OG of this community. Alan was 59 when he passed. Then, of course, was Kevin Samuels, whose death absolutely rocked this community and the country for that matter. He was and still is the smartest person I have ever met in my life, and he almost never steered me in the wrong direction. Kevin's influence is still very prevalent here, which should go without saying. Unfortunately, he and I had a falling out over a dispute with a mutual acquaintance, but if I see him in the afterlife, my guess is that we'd exchange apologies, take accountability for our roles in the fallout, shake hands, hug it out, laugh about how silly it was, and charge it to the game. Kevin was and always will be one of my very best friends, and I am honored that I had the privilege of being associated with him, even if just for a little while. I miss him dearly, and I sincerely regret the way things ended between us. What a lot of my detractors seem to think is that I was born this way. I was born a player who had women figured out from the start. Anyone who is or ever was good with women knows that there is no such thing as a quote-unquote natural, myself included. Guys, I represent you. I wasn't good looking or rich when I started this. I don't have a bunch of supercars parked in my driveway. I'm not a former federal agent. There isn't anything otherwise extraordinary about me. And I'm being serious. There isn't anything spectacular about me. In fact, I have a lot of obstacles that none of you guys have. Again, I'm a multiple-time convicted felon. I've got an arrest record longer than Myron's nose. I've got a major temper problem. I've got a slew of other personality traits that make my life harder than it needs to be. Yet here I am, less than a half a decade away from retirement. I've clapped enough cheeks to last a dozen lifetimes, and I'm getting married in October to a woman who has helped me build this business, who has actually gotten more attractive with age. Guys, I used to be you. I used to be lonely. I used to be frustrated. I used to be sexless. I was looking for direction and purpose. And I know this sounds cliche, but guys, cliches exist for a reason. And that cliche is that if I can do it, I know you can do it. Guys, I was a fucking loser. A fucking loser. There's no two ways about it. I simped for so many women, wrote bad checks for women, got cheated on by women, got taken advantage of, used, abused, you name it, I've been there. And the fact that I have built what I've built after being literally kicked out onto the street on New Year's Day in 2010 means that you can do it too. One of the many reasons I do what I do is because I know I make a difference. You guys will never know just how cool it is to hear your stories about how I've helped you or a friend through a tough situation. You can't put a price on that kind of feedback. And despite all the trolling, all the negativity that being in this community comes with, hearing your success stories is what makes it all worth it. The purpose of TSR Live is to show men how to increase their odds of succeeding in life, which includes mitigating a risk. And the most ubiquitous obstacle to success that presents the most risk in any man's life is women. If you can operate in today's dating market without, at the very least, getting taken advantage of by women, you're already ahead of 95% of guys out there. My goal is to teach men how to safeguard themselves against the kinds of havoc that modern women can wreak on your life. I do this by reacting to videos and articles as well as sharing some of my own stories. Every so often, I'll consolidate some of this knowledge in the form of a book or a course. I tell you about my victories and my failures and how to avoid failure. Television, movies, magazines, and social media have utterly destroyed relationships in this country. The Big Bang Theory wants us to think that if you just wait for the girl long enough, she'll eventually see that you're Mr. Right. But as most of us here figured out, life ain't the fucking movies. Life ain't a sitcom. You see, in the real world, Pam doesn't ditch her douchebag boyfriend Roy in shipping to marry Jim the good guy in the sales department. Men here know that despite Roy's cheating, his physical abuse, his emotional abuse, and drug problem, Pam stays with Roy, has a couple of kids with him, and will have the typical on-again, off-again relationship, baby daddy style, which will no doubt plague any and all relationships Pam has in the future. Over the years, you guys have seen me laugh, you've seen me cry, you've seen me angry, you've seen me elated, you've seen me goofy. You guys know exactly who I am inside and out. You have seen every kind of emotion from me. The reason for this is that I trust you guys. I know that when I cried, when Mike, Kevin, and Alan died, you guys didn't lose respect for me. You understood that these were good friends of mine. I also know that when I get angry, you guys know it's not just because I've lost control of my emotions. You guys know that my anger comes from a strong sense of loyalty to my friends, or when a man gets screwed over by his bitch of an ex-wife, or some basic bitch cheating on a genuinely good dude, then blaming him. The list goes on. You guys know me well enough to understand that yes, I have a temper problem, and yes, I do wear my emotions on my sleeve, which are two glaring weaknesses of mine going back to my childhood. But you guys still respect and follow me because you know that my emotional issues come from a place of genuine concern and justice. Those of you who have followed me over the years know that I am nothing if not loyal to my friends. Yeah, I get angry when people talk trash about my friends, and yeah, I've probably hurt myself by defending them. But if I had to do it again, I'd do it exactly the same way. Lastly, I'd like to thank the many, many supporters I've had over the years. Guys like Miami J, who's become a very good friend of mine, Mike Steele, formerly Geeky Anomaly, King Life, Jay Blaze, Dre Raven, Apollo, Ice Dragon Kid, Derek the Trader, Jose, BK from the Rockies, Chris Rice, Big Brandon, Black Lemur 2009, Neil Ray, Technomage B5, Black Wolf Inc., Gary Player, James Wingate, Cigar Man 85, and Jordan Royal. I also haven't forgotten the old school supporters like Freelance Ronin, Anti-Gravity 74, Mike the Supreme, Charles Merchant, I Bramblebush, Chris Von Erich, True Chino, Bad Wrench Automotive, Awestruck, Will the Coldest. I know I'm forgetting a lot of name guys, but bear with me. This is 1,000 episodes over a 5-year period, so try to give me some grace here. There are way too many to name, but from the bottom of my heart, I love each and every one of you guys, and I sincerely thank you for your support over the years. You guys are the reasons I do what I do. A lot of you guys have told me over the years about the positive impact I've had on your lives. A lot of you guys have told me that I've helped to change your lives for the better. And while I do appreciate those emails and messages and DMs, I need you guys to know that I am 654% certain that you guys have changed my life far more than I could ever change yours. I know you guys disagree, but facts are facts, and y'all can't tell me any different. These last 9 years have been a magic carpet ride. Every day, and I mean every single day, I sit in this studio before I get my day started and I say to myself, I cannot believe this is my job. It has been nothing short of a miracle that what started out as a hobby has turned into a thriving business that could potentially retire me before I'm 50, as well as help people live better lives. I am incredibly grateful to all of my fans and supporters because without you, TSR Live doesn't exist. Without you, we do not get to episode 1000. So I stand and applaud you guys because this victory is every bit as much yours as it is mine. And I am honored to call you guys my community. I'm proud to be associated with you, and I consider each and every one of you my friends. So here's to another 1,000 episodes.